This episode is brought to you by Netflix. New players, new games, new rules. Squid Game, The Challenge returns for a gripping second season. 456 contestants from all walks of life, competing in the ultimate test of strategy, alliances, and endurance. For a life-changing prize of $4.56 million. With stakes this high, why make friends when you can make millions? Catch up on the latest episodes, now playing only on Netflix.
A message from McAfee. Wondering why the post office is texting you, or why you owe thousands of dollars in toll fees? Because someone's trying to scam you. The good news? McAfee can help. With McAfee's award-winning scam detection, it's easy to tell what's real and what's fake. Over text, in your inbox, and online. If they're
You want a free gift?
Seriously? If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Dr. Sky Experience continues here, ladies and gentlemen, on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Wishing each and every one of you a happy Thanksgiving week for health and happiness, etc., etc. As we continue to talk here, ladies and gentlemen, with the great mysteries not only here on Ground Zero on the Earth, but also out into the cosmos. Great subject matters, as you tell us, from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and stories of American exceptionalism. We love those four types of conversations, but of the four, dialogue seems to be the best for us, and we enjoy it when you call us. With those of you out there that have many questions and comments, we prefer it in critical thinking. And to get in touch with us here with our very special guests, ladies and gentlemen, always great guests, the contact number, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And why not go to WABCRadio.com and also RedAppleAudioNetworks.com to listen to many rebroadcasts in the form of podcasts of not only the Dr. Sky Experience, but what about all those other great hosts that appear here on 77 WABC? And I'd like to take this time to thank our helmsman, as we like to call this, a magical ship powered by this great station here. We like to thank our helmsmen, those that make it behind the scenes and make it happen. To Tony and Bill, we appreciate their help, as always. Ladies and gentlemen, where were you on November the 22nd, 1963, if you're old enough to remember? And you may have thought that you've heard all of the answers and angles about the great mystery of the Kennedy assassination. And if you're up on science and history, more so history, you're probably wondering, when will we ever get to be told the truth? And the same story goes, when will we ever be able to be told the truth on the whole UFO story? But for the next 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen, we dig deeper and deeper into things you may not have heard or known about the Kennedy assassination a long time ago. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin and talk about some things that are very relevant. The Kennedy-Johnson team in 1960 only carried Texas by 46,233 votes. They were in Dallas to begin the 1964 campaign to woo Democrats and the American people for the upcoming election. Moving back in our time machine at the White House on Thursday, November the 21st, President Kennedy drew on his back brace, laced his shoes, and his left one had a 1/4-inch medical lift in the shoe. He slipped into his clothes his valet had selected and put on his tie. He pocketed his black leather wallet with $26 in cash and a St. Christopher's medal clipped onto it. His Massachusetts driver's license listed John F. Kennedy of 122 Bowdoin Street, Boston, Massachusetts, license number 05333-2D. Expiration date May 29, 1965. This was the only ID he had carried. But sadly, as we all know, some 24 hours later or such, a cruel and despicable act would have taken place. The assassination of the 35th President of the United States. He served only 1,036 days or thereabouts, a cruel and despicable act, as the mystery continues, ladies and gentlemen, some 62 years into the future. Shifting a focus away from the assassination of John F. Kennedy in Dealey Plaza in Dallas to 24 hours prior to Eunice, Louisiana. A book entitled A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK assassination, continues in the forefront. That the president would be assassinated by an individual known as Melba Mercedes, a.k.a. Rose Cheramie. That President JFK would be assassinated on Friday, November the 22nd, 1963 in Dallas, a great mystery. And here to talk with us about this with your questions and comments for the next 2 hours is author Todd C. Elliott, a former AM talk radio host and freelance writer and journalist who has been featured in so many journals and so many documentaries around the world. He comes to us from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and we say good morning to our special guest, Todd C. Elliott. Good morning, and thanks for being up with us as we continue to investigate the Kennedy assassination. How are you, sir?
Hey, Doc, I'm doing great. Got to say, I am back on radio, but I really appreciate late-night listeners and everybody listening tonight, and I say that as a morning show host now.
There you go, brother. The beat continues, right? Whether it's early morning, late afternoon, the magic of radio, what do we call it? The theater of the mind. So there you go, my friend. You know, we've had you on a number of times in the past and in previous programs that I've done around the country. But again, let's highlight the main thesis of your book here, and I find it very fascinating. The title, of course, Rose by many other names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK assassination. Tell us, first of all, your compulsion to write this. I mean, this is fascinating, little-known history that you're bringing forth to the audience of the Dr. Sky experience.
Right. Even as a kid, I was always fascinated with the strange coincidences and links between initially, JFK and Abraham Lincoln, the similarities. That fascinated me as a kid. I remember being given an assignment in 7th grade to write from the perspective of a historical inanimate object, and I chose the limousine or the Lincoln that was that Kennedy was shot in, and I've always just felt like there was just something more, something unsolved, and it is one of the great, if not the greatest crime of the 20th century that remains to this day, in my opinion, unsolved. I had read so many books about it. And this was my first book, and it's not a big book. I mean, it's about less than 100 pages, but it's a huge story. And it was the first magazine article that I'd written. I was very bored one summer, and I'd researched Rose Cheramie because I watched the JFK film by Oliver Stone, and I was fascinated by all the Louisiana connections. And so, growing up in Louisiana, you hear a lot of things. There's a lot of corruption and, certainly organized crime. But when, exactly right. I don't know, it was one day during the summer, and I realized that there was this woman, and they didn't say where exactly in the movie, but the first dramatized sequence of JFK by Oliver Stone, they show a woman being thrown from a moving vehicle. And then she's taken to a hospital, and that's where she tells people they're going to kill the president. This was about 48 hours before. So, this would have been on that Wednesday before Kennedy was assassinated on Friday. And she said that she was with men who were on their way to Dallas to kill the president on Friday. That's a very specific time and place. Exactly. And yes. I did my research. So that was the old highway 190 back in the day, and that was before there was an Interstate 10. And I realized that Eunice was in my backyard, and I just figured one day, what if I go to this town I'd never been to, and I just started asking questions, if anybody had ever heard about any of this history. And there were some people that knew, but it's strange because even today, amazing. Even after my book, they still don't really know about the history. And it was kind of a blip on the radar, but I assure you that Rose Cheramie, it wasn't even her real name, but she was not clairvoyant. In fact, nobody believed her because she was a known drug courier and a prostitute. And at the time in New Orleans, the godfather of New Orleans was Carlos Marcello. And, yes. In my research, I found out more history and connections to him in this little Cajun prairie town known as Eunice, Louisiana.
This is fascinating. I just want to jump in here and mention to ladies and gentlemen out there, if you have questions about this, your theories, I mean, this is one of the most amazing, Todd, mysteries that doesn't seem to ever have an ending because there's so many connective pieces to this big puzzle. 1-800-848-9222, our special guest, Todd C. Elliott, as I mentioned, if you're just joining us, for the next 2 hours, ladies and gentlemen, on all aspects of the Kennedy assassination. But Todd, take us back in time in the time machine to U.S. Highway 190, to the Arcadiana Trail, as you describe it. This is fascinating what you're about to hear, folks.
Yeah, so I learned that there was no such thing as the good old days. My research brought me to some places like Mamou, Louisiana, where if you still go out there today, there's a bar that I went into, and now it's only open on Mardi Gras Day, but it's called the Holiday Inn Lounge or the Holiday Lounge, and overgrown by these bushes in the back, by like holly bushes, are these old cat houses, and everybody knew about the cat houses. That means everybody knew about the prostitution that was coming and going. Highway 190 from New Orleans to Dallas was a main vein of drugs and prostitution and gambling and, basically slot machines, pinball machines that were played for money. And all this
lots of vice going on there, you bet.
All this was orchestrated out of New Orleans by Carlos Marcello. And this woman was just, as far as, I like to refer to her as she's the grandmother of JFK conspiracy theorists, because she is the only person that we know of that believed in a conspiracy to kill JFK while he was still alive. While he was still alive,
yes,
she believed. No one believed her, of course. But there were many witnesses to her saying these crazy things. As far as all of her connections and things like that, it's an amazing story. But I think that is the most important thing. She believed that these men that that was traveling with were on their way to kill the president on Friday. And I wanted to shift a story away from Dealey Plaza and Dallas. And so that's where I took it through the Louisiana history of things. And there was no book on her. And I'd reached out to several other authors and said, hey, what do you think about this? I want to write a book on Rose Cheramie. And people said, well, you'll never have, there's not enough information. We don't know too much about her. You'll never have enough for a book. Well, I just had just enough. And thankfully, Trine Day Publishing decided it was enough. And they wanted to put this out before the 50th anniversary. And I was, my first book, and I've written 4 more since then. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. But I don't ever want to write another JFK book. And I have author friends that have written 4 and 5. And
there's so many, Todd. We could go into the archives.
Right.
And just to mention to everybody, if you've been following the Dr. Sky Experience, we're privileged and honored to have, not too many months ago, an interesting gentleman here who wrote a book called That Day in Dallas, attorney Robert Tannenbaum. He, of course, the subtitle is Lee Harvey Oswald Did Not Kill JFK. And he, of course, a very interesting guest also. So what you're doing is you're taking us back in time to an area far from Dealey Plaza, as you're describing, and giving us an insight into something that's still so mysterious. Because when you hear about a person who has so many different aliases, and I'm not going to read every one of them, your book describes them. She's also known as Mrs. Albert Rodman, Patsy Sue Allen, Christine Youngblood. We see Rose L. Cheramie on here, Connie McKay, Zeta Jano. Wow, where did they come up with these? Where did she get all these names from? And it's so interesting to talk about it. But here, I want to bring this up and have you comment on this.
Okay.
People out there who have not seen Oliver Stone's JFK, here is a call to action. It's interesting because you're right. I never connected the dots. I've watched the movie a number of times. We were doing this a long time ago just for fun to watch the movie because I'm interested in the JFK assassination. And what do you see? Like you described, here's a woman allegedly from the movie. I don't make her out as a prostitute, but she looks like a victim and she gets pushed out of the car in the very opening act of the movie. Tell us more about that. That's incredible. And the connection is Rose Cheramie. You're talking about her.
Yeah, right. So she was with some seedy characters. She claimed that they were coming from Miami to do the job, to do the president. And but she was well known in New Orleans circles. So back then, again, she has an arrest record that takes her back after the Kennedy assassination. Things do not go well for her. I mean, her famous mugshot, she looks terrible. But these pictures and reaching out to her son, I discovered that she looked happy, she looked innocent at one time, and it turns out that she was in fact an FBI informant. Now, where she heard about the assassination, who knows? Pillow talk. She's a prostitute. Maybe that was one of her things. When she's rushed to the hospital in Eunice, Louisiana, I have the only concrete evidence, and I put it in the book. There's lots of photos. I put it in the book, a hard evidence that she was even there. Because for the longest time, they said there was no written evidence, no documentation that she was ever admitted into that hospital.
Interesting.
And I met the guy who was a radiologist back then, who, after it had happened, he took a copy. He took the original hospital logs and set them aside, and gave me a copy. And that's how because her name is spelled so many different ways too. So I had to, for the record, in her own signature, I see how she spelled her name, and that's why we put that in the title. But also, Louisiana has other interesting connections going on back then, especially in 1960. I mean, first of all, you've got Carlos Marcello. You also have Lee Harvey Oswald living in New Orleans, living around New Orleans. He's from the area.
Sure.
And then this is unique too. I guess the only person that ever brought a trial forward in the murder of President Kennedy was Orleans Parish District Attorney Jim Garrison.
Yeah, I was going to get into that because he describes, as you describe him, he is saying, and I quote, "On the trail of the assassins," as his book, title suggested, this connection here is quite amazing. And Todd C. Elliott, you are the man here as our guest for the 2 hours. And I just want to remind our listeners out there, we do see your calls coming in here, and we will do our very best to get as many of you on with your questions and comments. And all we simply ask is please stay on subject if we can, and I certainly hope that everybody will do that. But I do want to throw something out, Todd, and I'm not going to give the answer right now. A little challenge to the audience. In this horrible and despicable act, the cruel and despicable act of killing the 35th President of the United States, here's a question to the audience. What other notables died on November 22nd, 1963? And we'll talk about that, or maybe you, ladies and gentlemen, will tell us here at 1-800-848-9222. So when we come back, we have about 5 minutes or so before the hard break. I just wanted to dive into this a little more. Your research, this book comes out, 2013, am I correct? This is how good and how long this book has been available, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it's powerful stuff in here, ladies and gentlemen, because what you're about to hear from our special guest talks about, a very strange time in history, because we all have theories of who did it. We just described Mr. Tenenbaum in his book describing, of course, as many of you may simply think, that Lee Harvey Oswald was simply not the shooter or not the lone assassin. And let me ask you straight up, we're going to jump right to it and we'll get to the callers. What's your take on this whole story going back to Dealey Plaza? Let me hear what Todd C. Elliott believes. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I do believe that I definitely believe there was more than one shooter, and I think this was orchestrated. If you go back in time and you look at all the newsreels, and I don't want to disparage JFK's memory or anything, but he was a popular president with the people, but he was not popular in certain circles of the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
And there were a lot of people that really wanted him out of the office.
Particularly in the Dallas area and in the state of Texas, obviously. Many protests. There were death threats. A newspaper, I believe, had like a full-page advertisement, almost not saying that the president should be assassinated, but some really dark, shadowy figures. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I don't think Oswald was misled. He was duped into participating in now this is a theory that people, Oswald was an operative. He was a Marine. He was in the intelligence community. I think he was some sort of low level, wanting more, aspiring for, maybe a FBI or CIA, badge, as it were. But I think he was duped into believing that this was a routine sort of exercise to. The problem was that the Secret Service wanted Kennedy to wear the protective bubble top on his limousine.
Sure.
And Kennedy never wanted to wear that. He always wanted to be accessible to the people and shake hands. And there's a theory that Oswald was duped into. They were going to fire some shots. They were not going to hit the president. And, that was just to benefit the president later with more safety features added. I think Oswald was playing some role, even if it was nefarious. I still don't think that he pulled the trigger.
Well, you've answered us, as I'm sure the majority of the listeners of the Dr. Sky Experience would say, hey, from everything they've heard, the Warren Commission was what? Just pointless paper printed for so many people as what? Another round of disinformation to never tell us the truth, whether it's the JFK assassination or the other big one that's now in circles, which is always one that I think we're interested in, too, on this show, the whole UFO story, which is something for another time. Todd, we're coming up on that hard break, and I do promise, ladies and gentlemen, to get you on the air. But if you're still looking to call us, the number, we still have time, 1-800-848-9222. The questions that I would ask, simply this: where were you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're old enough on that particular date? And obviously, I was just a 7-year-old in the New York City area coming out of one of our classes in Catholic school, and everybody there put their head down on the table. People cried, obviously, and many people around the nation still are wondering what exactly happened. You're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. Our special guest, Todd C. Elliott, a book entitled A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK Assassination. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, I am former Special Agent Clint Hill, United States Secret Service, co-author of 5 Days in November, My Personal Experiences with the Kennedys on November 22nd, 1963. You are listening to Steve Cates.
November 22nd, 12:07 a.m. Central Standard Time, Air Force One lands in Fort Worth, Texas. On that same date, 12:30 a.m., Marina Oswald notices Lee Harvey Oswald still awake and acting nervous. At 7:30 in the morning on November the 22nd, Central Standard Time, Lee Harvey Oswald gets dressed, talks to his wife Marina, and argues intensively. At 7:23 a.m., Lee Harvey Oswald gets into a car to go to work with his Manica Carcano rifle, serial number C2766, wrapped in butcher paper. These are some of the timelines, that is, from William Manchester's book, The Death of a President. 32 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Todd C. Elliott, talking about some amazing part of history, and his documentation is incredible on Rose Cheramie and the JFK assassination. Todd, let's go to the phone callers. Let's say good morning to Danny in Massachusetts. You've been patient. How are you this morning, and thanks for being with us.
Hi, gentlemen. It's a great show.
Thank you.
And I'm a firm believer that he was shot from the front and the back, not from the side. Because from the side, if you miss, you hit Jackie, and they definitely didn't want that to happen. But I go back to the doctors that were in Dallas in Parkland Hospital who saw President Kennedy. Dr. Charles Crenshaw was interviewed on the show 2020, that news show back in 92. He said the bullet, and he took a close look at Kennedy's head just before they put him, they wrapped him up and whatever. He said it was just above, from the front, above just below the hairline, and blew out the back of his head. He also said that Kennedy had a small wound just above the necktie that we all see him bringing his arms up. And the problem with all this is because he said that Dr. Malcolm Perry, all of them tried to save him. Malcolm Perry was a tremendous surgeon. He says he slit open the president's throat a little bit where the entry wound was on the throat to put a tube down there for air. That night in the press conference, Dr. Malcolm Perry in a news conference said it appears that President Kennedy was shot from the front. When he said that, he walked away from the podium. Either Secret Service or FBI, take your pick, grabbed Malcolm Perry and said, "Don't you ever again say that shot came from the front." Now, Dr. McCullum was 2 feet from him and heard the whole exchange. Dr. Crenshaw, who was interviewed, who just described the wounds, said they were afraid to say stuff. They were afraid to talk, but they're backed up because like 100 people disappeared after the assassination. Dr. Dorothy Kilgallen, a year after one of Kennedy's girlfriends was murdered.
Oh, it's a tremendous story, Danny. I mean, I wish we had a lot of time. Stay with us. I want Todd to respond to this because you're bringing up some very insightful points here. The mystery of the Kennedy assassination continues.
Right. The caller's right. In the first press conference, really, the first briefing after the president was brought to the hospital, it was Malcolm Kilduff, and if you look for images of him or video, you can still see the original. Some have been edited, but he points to his own forehead, and he says the president was shot right here. He points to his own forehead as if his pointer finger was the bullet coming from the front. I remember back and to the left from the JFK movie. Not only that, the tracheotomy that they attempted botched any evidence of an entry wound, but you can clearly see when Kennedy is coming into the Zapruder film from behind the Stemmons Street sign there, he starts grabbing and clutching at his neck as if he had been shot from the front. And, that's a lot of, and after the shooting, a lot of people ran up on the grassy knoll because they saw something or they saw someone and they thought they were chasing the assassins.
Well, let me say this, Danny, and to everybody listening and also our special guest as we talk right here with Todd. This is interesting. I'm a regular shooter and I spent a lot of time with the rifle world and, accessorizing them. And I owned one of these Mannlicher Carcanos, not his serial number, obviously, but the same lookalike.
Right.
Had the scope that was, mounted from a gun store in California, which was Martin B. Redding, and I had it done, accessorized, and we went out to shoot the 6.5. And I can tell you, setting up Pillsbury flour sacks at the alleged distances that the assassination distances took place, all I can tell you is I'm not an expert shooter, but not bad. Okay, not on a soapbox tonight. But here's the deal. It was a very sloppy rifle, Danny. And the truth of the matter is, you're all right. Danny's right. The kind of wounds that you see from that, could that rifle have done that? Yeah, maybe so, but not from the geometry of the whole thing. Right, Danny, as you're explaining, and I appreciate this.
All right, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, here's another thing. Why would Oswald, in Texas at the time, when he could walk into any sporting goods store in Texas or gun store, he could buy a rifle, but he doesn't do that. He allegedly mail-ordered a gun under a fake name, and that
Alex Heidel.
Sense.
Alex Heidel, ladies and gentlemen. That's his Rose Cheramie by many other names, right? That's it.
Right. Yeah. I also found it very interesting, even if something were to happen like this today, the timing of everything, from when the president was shot till Oswald was arrested, I mean, that was a world record. They had a guy in about 30 minutes or 20 minutes after the shooting. I would put law enforcement officials to the test today to beat that time. I don't think they could. And what was interesting was the Amarillo Globe-Times had a story that came out that day in the headline front page, Hidden Assassin Kills President. Okay, so I always thought that was interesting because in the Hidden Assassin headline, right underneath it, it said they believed that the shots were fired by a white man, about 30, slender of build, 165 pounds, 5 foot 10 inches. But this was a hidden assassin. Okay, well, and they seem to have had his address and everything. They went to his house. They knew he was at a theater after someone reported him walking in without paying. It's just, to me, it's bizarre. It's weird, and it's not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And
all too many things, Todd, in such a short time. And Danny, thank you for your call and bringing us these important pieces of information as we try to piece the puzzle together. But let's see, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to the next break, if we can actually listen in to NBC News, a little short clip, we call it clip number 1, about the events that happened on that historic date, November 22nd, 1963.
And Delano Roosevelt.
Excuse me, Chad. Here is a flash from the Associated Press, Dateline Dallas. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. There is no further confirmation, but this is what we have on a flash basis from the Associated Press. 2 priests in Dallas who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds. There is no further confirmation. This is the only word we have indicating that the president may, in fact, have lost his life. It has just moved on the Associated Press wires from Dallas. The 2 priests were called to the hospital to administer the last rites of the Roman Catholic Church, and it is from them we get the word that the president has died, that the bullet wounds inflicted on him as he rode in a motorcade through downtown Dallas have been fatal. We would remind you there is no official confirmation of this from any source as yet.
Bill, just moments before you brought...
What's exactly happening, ladies and gentlemen, is something very quick. It's amazing how all these things happen in such a relatively fast time, but it goes on like this. 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, President John F. Kennedy is pronounced dead by Surgeon Kemp Clark. That official at 2 p.m., that date, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, November 22nd, 1963. Wow, Todd, this gets even more bizarre. So let's go to the callers here. We got to continue here because we want to, because they are so important. Let's say good morning to Max in Manhattan. Good morning, Max. Your theories, your ideas, and your questions.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
It's been in New York radio talk show hosts. It's been a habit that on the 22nd, they usually have a show on Kennedy and the Kennedy assassination. But for these past 3 or 4 years, these typical shows by these talk show radios have not been given. So when you guys have this show on, I'm really appreciative of you guys putting the show on. I guess it's
Thank you.
Okay, a question concerning this. There was a woman by the name of Judith Very Baker, I believe her name was, and she came up with a book on Oswald. She said that she had an affair with him, and it seems, according to her, that he wasn't just a stupid Marine patsy, but he made several trips to Russia at the time. During the Cold War, when he went there, he'd leave his passport at wherever the entrance port was, and he disappeared within Russia for about 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
This is kind of, just that says that, says a lot about what Oswald could have been doing or what his setup was. Can you take off on this or take off from this?
Yeah, go ahead there, Todd. This is interesting, and thanks, Max. If you have to take the answer off air because we've got a lot of callers, but please continue, Max. I'm sorry. Todd.
Yeah. Okay. So Judith Very Baker, I met her a few times. We share a publishing house. I've read her book. It reads like a teenage girl's diary, and I don't believe Judith Very Baker. I really don't, and I'll give a good reason as to why. She was initially interviewed for The Men Who Killed Kennedy on the History Channel, and they never aired her episode. I think initially because I don't think she was credible. But it's an interesting theory that they worked at a New Orleans coffee place in New Orleans together. That may be the only connection she ever had, but that was a front for the CIA, which was proven later. And so my problem with Judith Very Baker is that she doesn't give a lot of facts. It's a memoir, but it reads like fiction. But if she was being paid at a place that was a front for the CIA back then, where she said she and Oswald worked, then I believe that she was an agent for the CIA. I believe Oswald was some kind of agent. You know that even to this day, you cannot get tax records or tax return information on Lee Harvey Oswald. It's impossible to do. And that I think that if Judith Very Baker was paid as an agent back in 1960, then to this day, she remains an agent of disinformation. That's my belief. Now, as far as
and I hate to cut you guys short in this, but the clock rules here, and I do want to say this, Max. I appreciate your concerns. You bring up some very, very good points here. In the short time that we've had with you, I hope you'll be continuing to, check in with our Dr. Sky experience as we open up mysteries of the universe. But Todd, this is fascinating because so many books come out to report so many things. Obviously, everybody has a right in a free country to express these opinions. But again, you're saying that you don't believe, because of your research, that she is very credible in her analysis and in what she writes.
Yeah, and as far as Oswald, there's one myth that they keep bringing up even to this day, and it's that Oswald was seeking notoriety and he was seeking fame, and for different reasons. He's also accused of firing shots on General Edwin Walker in Dallas.
And let's continue that on the other side of the break. Again, I apologize to everybody to be so short with people, but I think you and I, Todd, know that we're two nice guys and we don't really want to hurt anybody's feelings. But as long as they kind of come in with the same subject matter and not go deviating off into other subjects. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This is Senator Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts. I'm talking to Steve Case.
As we continue, ladies and gentlemen, to move through time and space, talking about the timeline from William Manchester's book, The Death of a President. At 10 a.m. on November the 22nd, Abraham Zapruder, the gentleman who captured so much of the Kennedy assassination, goes home to get and fetch his movie camera. At 10:05 a.m. on that date, President Richard Nixon, not before he was president, leaves Dallas on American Airlines Flight 82. And then, at 12:25 p.m., Air Force One makes a 13-minute flight from Fort Worth to Dallas Love Field. 48 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest, Todd C. Elliott. Todd, let's continue with the callers. Let's go out here to the great state of Arizona, where I am, as we say good morning to Mark. Mark, you're on with Todd C. Elliott.
Good morning, Todd. Great show. I had one question for you. The answer to your question, Dr. Sky, the man that died on November 22nd, 1963, everybody knows was John F. Kennedy. How much do I win?
Hey, wow. We haven't started prizes yet. So I guess I'm just going to have to wish that one into the cornfield, if you know what I mean, for now. Okay, Mark. Okay, so continue, please.
Basically, I was just thinking before I give my question, make it real quick. The same playbook, Charlie Kirk, John F. Kennedy, and then Butler, Pennsylvania. Same playbook, different time, different targets. That's what happened today. But my question for you, think about that one, is all the books that have been written about the Kennedy assassination, what percentage would you say that were done by writers who were paid by the CIA to distract the public?
Wow. Interesting question, Mark. Todd. Wow.
I think that as you look at books that were written around the time of the 50th anniversary, when the intelligence community knew this was going to be a subject of discussion and to be revisited, I think there was some pressure put on. I mean, the movie JFK is based on two books, Crossfire and On the Trail of the Assassins. And I thought those were two really good books. Joan Mellon has some great books on that. One of the doctors at Parkland even wrote a book, which I thought was very insightful. I don't know if they didn't pay me. I sure didn't get my check. But they, I just wanted to do it because I just wanted to put my little brick in the wall of this great big thing. And I'm okay with just writing one. And I just wanted to do my part. I mean, I think I wrote it and researched it from the heart. I think Vincent Bugliosi, who wrote Helter Skelter and capitalized on the Manson murders, was a harsh, hardline. Oswald did it and he acted alone.
You better believe it. You're so right. Reclaiming History. Yeah. We interviewed him, and he told me straight up before he passed. He said, I had my secretary on legal paper. I wrote it by hand, and she transcribed it. And I said, well, that's interesting because the book is as big as the old New York white pages or Los Angeles white pages. It's really a well-documented book, but you're so right. His insistence, and I mean, he really put his foot on the pedal and said, no, Lee Harvey Oswald is the assassin. Mark, you get the last word, and we appreciate you also.
Bless everybody. Jesus loves you. The Lord and the Savior is the way to go.
No, thank you, Mark, for your commentary. Appreciate that greatly. Let's say good morning to Jim in Connecticut. You've been patient. Good morning, and I hope you're having a good morning. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to bed. It's 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Hey, we pulled the night shift here. This is good, you know.
Yeah. I saw a lot of stuff through the years, you know, and you put the pieces together. I saw some fantastic documentaries about last year or so, and they were incredible, and I'm surprised a lot of people don't pick up on this stuff. They interviewed Carlos Marcellos. He was in the yard, and outside getting some fresh air at the prison, and they questioned him about that. He said, "Yeah, the mob was involved." He says, "I'm glad they killed him." He says, "I'm glad." He says, "I'm glad they got the SOB." Well, the whole thing was he was bitter. He was part of the mob. The government always hired the mobsters. Sometimes contracted them because they can get stuff done in countries where our government would have trouble. And they hired, they hired the mob to try to overthrow Castro with the casinos. And anyway, so he was pissed off because they were supposed to get favors, and then Kennedy's brother, double-crossed them. So I don't want to go there into that story. But then the one I saw was, I saw a couple, but they're quite convincing. One guy had a breakdown rifle. I've seen the type of rifle. It's kind of.
I had one too. Yeah, you could put it in a suitcase, right? It works.
This was made by Remington, and he said it had a special bullet with mercury in the head. So when it shot you, it really exploded into hundreds of pieces. And when they shot Kennedy, he said from the front. He was near the bridge behind the fence. He was the guy that did it. He said there was 4 people. He said there was 4 people that were actually assigned to assassinate Kennedy. He says Oswald was a patsy. He said we weren't supposed to know who all the other people was. He says, but I was the guy that shot Kennedy from the front and blew his head off. He says I was behind the fence. He says the others wore black coats, shirt and tie like FBI agents. They had fake badges that were made actually. He said in the building where Oswald was, he says, because there was a little foundry downstairs, he said, I think it was that building. He says, and that's where they made police badges and FBI badges for the local or the government.
Well, Jim, I appreciate it. The time, of course, is of the essence. I just want to have our special guest, Todd, to respond to this, because if you do something like this, you're right. And, Jim, you bring up some good points. I mean, we're not going to do a firearm class here, but the point is, if you have some of these really sub-calibers, every bottleneck cartridge, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at it, that's why the 5.7, little cartridge that you see in handguns now, it's a little bottleneck cartridge. Why? What is a bottleneck cartridge? The ballistics on that, it's like a little rifle in itself if you have it in a pistol caliber. But the point is, what you're talking about, Jim, is that it probably wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald's Mannlicher Carcano, but that leads the mystery and it opens up the floodgates on that. But, wow. Yeah. Thanks, Jim. And Todd, you got the floor to the top. We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so the motive that Carlos Marcello had was Bobby Kennedy had extradited him out of the country, dropped him off in the jungles of Guatemala. They were putting a lot of pressure on him. He wasn't born in the United States. When he got back, or they had a pilot fly him back to New Orleans, a lot of people believe that David Ferry was the pilot that brought Carlos Marcello back to the United States. That is one theory, a motive for Carlos Marcello wanting to do the job. Mafia would have been low-level mechanics in the field. They could not have done the cover-up, and arranged for such things that day, but they were doing the grunt work. And the shooter that he was talking about from the front that shot with the mercury-filled bullets, that was James Files. And he's been in prison. I think he's dead now, but he did confess from prison that, he did have the special ammunition, and he was one of the shooters. He kind of looked like Oswald, actually, back in the day. He was probably 18 or 19 years old, and did her on the grassy knoll.
Wow.
I always thought he was an interesting case. Yeah.
No, it's just totally incredible. But to the audience and our family out there in the Dr. Sky Experience, you're probably scratching your head saying, wait a minute, when is Todd C. Elliott going to tell us the story of Rose Cheramie? And I purposely wanted to do this, so obviously, not that people will stay up. Of course, they want to stay up to listen to anything that we have to say that's, opening our minds. and we're proud to be of service. So when we come back, I'd like to talk in detail from what your book is about who she was, what exactly was going on there, as you write, with your extensive and exhaustive research. That's a very, very interesting story indeed. But so far, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get in on the conversation, certainly please do that. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And tell us how we can get your book and describe the title again so people can understand fully from you.
Sure. The book is called A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK Assassination. You could get it at Trine Day, that's TRINE Day.com, or call 1-800-556-2012. So that's, I always thought it would have made a good movie, too. So
I think it still has that possibility. We just have to get somebody out there who'll call in and ask for your number off air, and we'll see where that can lead. Right, Todd? That's an amazing story.
Yes, sir.
But in the moments to the top of the hour, I just wanted to continue as outlined the timeline in William Manchester's exceptional book, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't seen this, though it's printed a long time ago, The Death of a President, it continues on to talk about what happened leading up to the assassination. As I mentioned before, at 12:25 p.m. on November the 22nd, Air Force One made that 13-minute flight from Fort Worth to Dallas Love Field. And then at 1:29 p.m. Central Standard Time, the motorcade turns onto Houston from Main Street. And then 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, the alleged assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, assassinates the president from the sixth floor, that is, of the Texas School Depository. And I got in trouble on a show, and I'm not trying to be a funny guy. I called it the Texas School Book Suppository, but I'm not trying to be funny, so I wanted to clarify that it is. And what was it, seriously? It was a book distribution center for, schools and colleges? Is that what it was?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Okay. And you mentioned the turn of the president's motorcade onto Houston Street, which if you look at it from the sixth floor, Houston Street, if you were an assassin perched in the sniper's nest up on the sixth floor, the motorcade coming up Houston would be going directly at you. In other words, a target would be moving, but it would be getting larger and larger in your scope. If Oswald was up there, why didn't he just shoot the president from Houston Street instead of waiting for the motorcade to turn and go under some oak trees?
Good point.
Yeah.
Todd,
so
that concludes hour number one. But ladies and gentlemen, hour number two just around the horizon. Not the event horizon, but around the horizon as we continue talking about the book, A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK Assassination. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
6 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Programs as you tell us you like with the email that you can send me, and we do resource many guests, not everyone we guarantee, but through this particular email, just drsky@wabcradio.com. To get in touch with our show, the simple contact number, 1-800-848-9222. And I want to thank those that are the helmsmen of our radio show, navigating the powerful signal of 77 WABC, Tony and Bill, who, of course, make sure that you're hearing this show just as good as you would expect from no matter where you are, here on the West Coast of the United States, into the East Coast, around the nation, around the world, and I'm sure even out to the universe. Our special guest is author Todd C. Elliott, a book that we'll get into in detail, A Rose by Many Other Names, Rose Cheramie and the JFK Assassination. But before we do that, more of the timeline as outlined by William Manchester's great book, The Death of a President. At 1:38 p.m., that is Central Standard Time on November 22nd, Parkland Hospital admits case number 24740, the President of the United States, JFK. At 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the President is pronounced dead by Surgeon Kemp Clark. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the story continues. Well, let's get back to our very special guest. Todd, let's talk a little bit more about what your book is about so people can hear the story about Rose Cheramie.
Okay. So Rose Cheramie, again, was a known prostitute drug courier, and she ran drugs for Carlos Marcello, we believe. She had quite an arrest record. She had an interesting short life. She became a JFK statistic, though. One of those many witnesses and people who were involved in the assassination investigation who would meet with an untimely demise, somewhere usually alone by themselves on the side of a highway, which happened quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Now, her life began in Texas. It ended in Texas. She was originally from Houston, but made a life in Louisiana. Now, the depiction that JFK movie gives from Oliver Stone is great. In fact, Jim Garrison wanted her so badly for his case. Again, it was the only case or trial brought forward in the murder of the president. But by the time 1967 had rolled around and Garrison had amped up his investigation, they found out that Rose Cheramie had been found dead just outside of Tyler, Texas, on the side of a highway, and she had been found on the side of the road with her head. Someone had arranged her luggage to be in the middle of the road and slowly curve off to the right side of the highway. And at the end of the line of suitcases was her head placed, on the Texas highway, on the curb.
How horrible. So how grotesque.
It was and I actually talked to the guy who claimed to have hit her. He claims he didn't hit her, but he found her. And he described the scene, and he described it perfectly. And then Oliver Stone, to his credit, really captured that. But there were files on Rose Cheramie that Jim Garrison had, and I paid for copies of those. I had every little thing that Garrison had in his collection about her. Now, so 48 hours before the president is assassinated, she's picked up in a small town in Eunice, Louisiana, and she is brought to a hospital. They think she's crazy, and so crazy that she needs to be reprimanded to the state. It's basically a state mental asylum or mental hospital, right, as it was back then. And so they brought her there, like almost in the middle of the night. They dropped her off there. Now, on the day when Friday rolls around, when the president's about to be killed, she's in the hospital telling people it's going to happen today in Dallas. She even knew, she claimed to get really, really excitable about it's going to happen at Dealey Plaza. She kind of knew when and where. She had a lot of details for someone who really, no one believed. And then so when she's sent to the hospital, no one believed her until the president was murdered on Friday in Dallas. And after that, the state trooper who had picked her up and brought her to the hospital originally also brought her to the state hospital in Jackson, Louisiana. He made phone calls, and his supervisor called him and said, "You got to get that woman out of this state." It's kind of crazy to think that, like, we're going to extradite her back to Texas. Supposedly they called Captain Will Fitz of the Dallas Police Department. They told Captain Will Fritz that they had a suspect in custody, and he was not interested in her. Of course, they had already had their man,
I heard.
And they didn't want any more information. Mm-hmm. And what was weird was no one in Louisiana wanted her to be around anymore, so these state troopers basically brought her as far as Houston, Texas, and left her there. I mean, here's a lady who had foreknowledge of the assassination, and they just dropped her off in Houston and never saw her again. Now, she did disclose some details that she was to meet a ship captain in Houston, at the port of Galveston, and she was to pick up heroin, a large quantity of heroin. The heroin was going to be used to pay the assassins from Dallas. So, and then why would they do that? Because heroin is worth way more than U.S. dollars, probably still is to this day, and it's untraceable. So there were no serial numbers, and some of the things that she was saying and some of the things that she shared, I mean, sometimes I can't believe that she said as much as she did
and got away with it, but that proved very fateful for her.
That's amazing, Todd. I want to go to the callers here. If we have Rich on the line in New Jersey, you've been very patient. Your comments, questions are appreciated. Good morning if you're with us. How are you doing there?
Hi guys. A preface to what I want to say. There's a movie called Hombre with Paul Newman. There's a fight at the Stagecoach, and you can see that the blood is painted on the film. I'm looking at a book right now by David Mamet, The Disenlightenment, the Kennedys. I don't know if you allow me to read it, but it says...
well, if you'd be brief, I mean, we don't want to have the whole thing read.
Talks
go
about
ahead.
What's wrong with the film. Several frames are missing. No one has ever suggested a logical reason for their exorcism or suppressive red. The blood-spattered explosion on the president's head is clearly painted on. It exists only for one frame, 0.4 seconds. The frame 112 is absent. In the following frame, it's there. And the next frame is gone. It goes on and on. The film is fake, it says. Why? I don't know.
So is that the Zapruder film that you're referring to, Rich? I mean,
yes,
I guess that's the one.
I'm looking at the book right now. He talks about JFK involved with the girlfriend of Sam Giancana, Jack Ruby, Oswald's mother, all that stuff he goes on to say about it.
Well, go ahead, Todd. Respond, because this is fascinating stuff here. I mean, who knows? CIA special operations, something to change the video or whatever we've got. The mystery gets deeper. Please continue, Todd.
Yeah. Well, we certainly know it wasn't the mafia that could have done anything like that back in the day. So this is high-level intelligence. A lot of people even believe the Life magazine with Oswald on the cover holding the newspaper is a fake, is a forgery, that the shadows don't match, they don't line up. And they did that back in the day, but it was not low-level mafia guys who could paint blood on a frame. And the problem with Zapruder was himself interviewed by the FBI. The FBI had agents that were not listed out in the crowd that day, but they were taking people's cameras away from them. They were taking film, and people were told they would get this film back. A lot of them never did. Zapruder himself eventually sold that to, I want to say, Time Life magazine.
You're right. I read that. He sold it for a price. He wasn't going to give it up. Yeah. You bet. Right.
So they had it for years before it was ever shown to the public. Geraldo Rivera, to his credit, first showed that Zapruder film to the American public on his talk show in the 70s. And that was when the House Assassination Committee was opening all these cases, and a lot of people started ending up with, self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the back of the head. And so is it possible that the CIA could have helped with that cover-up? They definitely chopped up the film. And there's other mysteries, too, like the babushka lady. She's caught on the film, but no one ever identified her and never found any trace of who that woman was. But, yeah, I mean, that is plausible. I mean, for back then, I think that is something intelligence community people could have done back in the day.
Rich, that's amazing that you brought it to us. You got a closing comment if you're still with us, because we must move on. Go ahead, sir, if you're with us.
Well, I just remember as a kid in fourth grade in a Catholic school, they sent us home. I saw my mother crying in the apartment. And I'm a kid. I never knew anybody who got killed or died before. And I went back in my room. I started bawling my head out for some. I mean, I never forgot that.
Yeah, me too.
First person I ever knew that I knew died of. That type of thing.
Yeah, it's tragic and traumatic for the whole nation. Yeah. Rich in New Jersey.
Thank you.
You and your family. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving week.
You too, guys.
This is amazing here. Let's go to clip number 2 as we go back in our time machine to the sounds of NBC News as it reported this particular tragic day.
As we said before, the sniper's nest has been found, and police have recovered a British .303 rifle with a telescopic sight. This is Tom Whalen reporting from Texas for NBC from WBAP-TV.
Things can move this fast when you are dealing with a story of this magnitude, even while we were getting reports from Fort Worth, Dallas, on finding the sniper's nest and details of what was going on in that building from which the bullets were fired. We were handed another story here from Dallas, and Frank has that.
It's to the effect that a Secret Service agent and a Dallas policeman have been shot and killed some distance away from the area where President Kennedy was assassinated. And
you don't want to end up with Alzheimer's and...
Well, fascinating information here, ladies and gentlemen, from going back in the time machine. But this is interesting, too. Let's move on to the timeline. And, Todd, you can comment, of course, as our special guest here. All this activity is happening in breakneck speed, light speed, as we would say here. So at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Washington, D.C. phone system breaks down. Now, that's incredible. Why? Because of all the people trying to call, all the people trying to get information in and out of Washington. 2:03 p.m. on that date, Lee Harvey Oswald leaves the boarding house with a pistol. Now, that's a separate story. At 2:15 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald murders Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. Now, get a load of this. 2:40 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald runs into the Texas Theater, where he's later arrested with a fist fight. He gets up, they find him, they corner him, he tried to reach for his pistol. I think he punched one of the officers in the face, and thus they arrested him. And then finally, 3 p.m., Marina Oswald, get a load of this, finds Lee Harvey Oswald's wedding ring at home on the top of a dresser. Wow, Todd, the story just gets more amazing, more crazy, more unbelievable. Right. So how the heck did Lee Harvey Oswald get all over the city to go back to the rooming house, unless these places are only 25 feet away from where the alleged shooting took place? It's amazing.
Yeah, and another amazing thing is Dallas police officers walked right by him. He was on, I want to say, the third floor in the break room at the school book depository waiting by a payphone. Mm-hmm. Perhaps he was waiting to hear from his handlers or his operators at the time. But he walked past the entire police department and the security. He walked out of the school book depository. And it's weird that the cops showed up in force, about 20, 30 cops, Dallas PD. One of the higher-ups was there there's a photograph of him putting Oswald in the car. And basically, all these cops were responding to a man who walked into a movie theater without paying a ticket. That seems a bit overkill. Yeah. And again, they found him in record time that would baffle even modern law enforcement. But Oswald, the interesting thing about the phone lines, too, in Washington, D.C., they all went down, and there's, Oswald is in jail. It's amazing if you go back and look at every interview that he gave. I'm surprised they let him speak so much to the press and to the cameras like they did, but they did. And he also made a phone call while he was in jail, and they traced that phone call back to Virginia. And what's in Virginia? Langley, Virginia.
Wow.
And that is the CIA. They think that he was calling his handler. They noted that. They traced the number back. And then the curious thing is, and this is all into the mythology of why Oswald did it, because he wanted notoriety. He wanted to be famous. I just don't buy that, because he had an opportunity. As the eyes of the news world were upon him, here's a camera in his face with a microphone. They asked him, did you shoot the president? And he said, no, I didn't shoot anybody. He said, what are you being charged with? He said, I don't know. They just told me that this policeman got shot. And then Oswald famously said, if he was a rabid communist, and if he had just slain the leader of the free world as a communist, he would have claimed that. He would have owned up to that, but he didn't. He said, I'm just a patsy. And those words right there. And
that's
those
incredible.
Words, it implies
those are infamous
words.
Right, they're infamous. And what's even more interesting, what could be more interesting than what you just said, but this is also credible. Give us your take on how this individual, Lee Harvey Oswald, alleged Marine sharpshooter, now has the ability to defect to Russia. And it all seems all so well orchestrated that during that time, as we continue the deep part of the Cold War, I think we'll agree, right, ladies and gentlemen?
Right.
How does this guy simply slip through the cracks? He winds up, denouncing his American citizenship, if I'm correct. Many people may have heard that 1,000,000 times. And now he marries a young lady over there. That's his right. He brings her back with little or no difficulty. I'm sure the immigration process then was very much a very slow process, especially from the then Soviet Union. How does all this take place? That's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't. And in 1960, it would have never happened. No way in the world would Oswald would have been allowed to defect and then come back with a Russian bride. But as soon as he did, and Oswald is in Russia, a strange thing happens. The U-2 spy plane flown by Gary Powers is shot down. After Oswald gets to Russia. Oswald worked with radar. He knew what to look for. And then he's permitted to come back to the country. His name definitely went on a list, and I think that back then they were already kind of setting him up to be the fall guy, the patsy, as he said in his own words. And then there's this other myth that he was a sharpshooter. And so I want to say about 2 months before Kennedy was assassinated, there was a General Edwin Walker in Dallas who was very right-wing, militant, very conservative, and Oswald they blamed an assassination attempt of that general on Oswald, but this was a man who was sitting in his chair in his living room, and the shot missed. So so you can't shoot a guy sitting down in his living room, but you can shoot a moving target.
So much for a sharpshooter, right, Todd? But let's do this. Going back in the time machine, talking about Lee Harvey Oswald, another clip that I'd like the audience to hear if they have never heard this, especially younger listeners who weren't even around. They were just a gleam and a thought in many people's parents' eyes or whatever. Clip number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
In the wake of the Kennedy assassination, the Dallas police, on the one hand, they were committing all of the resources to trying to solve the crime.
But you hold him in the doorway. When you get him in the doorway, hold him in the doorway.
On the other hand, they were ill-equipped to handle this tsunami of reporters.
Well, I was questioned by a judge. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed legal representation.
In bringing Oswald out, they were, of course, doing something that you would never see happen today. But they were trying to cooperate with the press with the understanding that there would not be questions shouted at him.
Did you kill the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
You have been.
Nobody said what? Sir?
You have been.
Nobody said what? Okay, we ain't hear you. Okay.
What did you do in Russia?
That's amazing. Going through our timeline, we find out 2:30 a.m., November the 23rd, Lee Harvey Oswald is charged with the murder of President John F. Kennedy in Texas. That's an amazing story unto itself. And then, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to move through this story, which is totally amazing, Todd, you bring up so many points here. It makes it even more confusing, but not to the listeners, right? Your information is just, this is so good. But we have a few minutes before the bottom of the hour. So tell me, in your opinion, who do you think Rose Cheramie was with, and describe these people that were described by her? Give us some information of who these people she traveled with were like.
And she claimed that the men that she was traveling with were from Miami, and they were going to Dallas. She described them as Italian-looking. She was shown some mugshots and things like that of people. Yes. The state trooper that picked her up initially became a part of Jim Garrison's investigative team. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but she one of the mugshots that was going around at the time was a man who would later be involved in the Watergate scandal. And a lot of people think that Rose Cheramie was some sort of agent. I uncovered, and as did Jim Garrison, she was an FBI informant. And after the assassination, she was quoted as saying, I don't even want to be a part of this mess anymore. She did not want to talk to the FBI, probably because she already did.
Well, yeah, and it's just like a story that I actually had in my life. And when President Nixon was running for, I believe, his second term, we were in New Jersey, going to high school at the time, and actually sitting in the Republican headquarters. I'm identifying what party I was obviously with and still with. But the interesting thing is, Richard Nixon's brother was there, and then also sitting next to him was a woman with the last name Hunt. And I said to her, nice to meet you. And she goes, well, my father was E. Howard Hunt. And for people who don't know who he was, here's what I'm building up to real quick before the bottom of the hour, is that she was saying to me that there have been rumors, which she didn't believe. She said, I want to dispel it if you've heard it, that my father was one of the so-called alleged hobos walking behind the train tracks, an area by the grassy knoll with, get a load of who else? Frank Sturgis and Eugenio Martinez. And who are those people? The Watergate burglars, right? That's amazing.
Yes. Sturgis was the one they tried to link to these Italian-looking men from Miami with Rose Cheramie. Also, fun fact, Woody Harrelson's dad was thought to be one of the hobos, and he was later arrested for assassinating a judge in Houston. He was a sort of a high-level operative. But yeah, and a lot of people think that the Bay of Pigs sealed the fate of JFK. Like when he did not provide air cover for the Cuban invasion, a lot of people, I think he signed his own death warrant at that point.
Interesting. So, Todd, do you think we're going to get a better answer as to the truth and facts of the UFO thing? Or are we ever going to hear the one about the Kennedy assassination? And maybe that's an unfair question because what's your response? That's crazy stuff.
I don't think the waters are so muddied now. I don't think we'll ever get the truth. Someone has probably already come forth and told us the truth about the Kennedy assassination. It's just that there's so much, and there's more now. That it's all distraction. Some of it is disinformation put out there. I don't think we're ever going to have a smoking gun, but we've come pretty close. I think we'll find out more about UFOs before we know the truth of the JFK.
Well, you've answered us, and that's what we love, a man who gives us a straight-up answer. And, folks, if you're still looking to give us a call here, we encourage it. There's plenty of time, 1-800-848-9222. And if John is in Reno from there and still there up in the beautiful Silver State in the high desert, we'll get you on and everybody else as we can, ladies and gentlemen, talking with our very special guest, Todd C. Elliott. Tell us, Todd, quickly, how do we get the book for people who want to dig deeper into this?
I would visit Trine, Trine, TrineDay.com, and you can order it from there. It's also available on Amazon.
Well, thank you very much. More on the Dr. Sky Experience with you as we move deeper into your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Wishing each and every one of you the best for a happy and healthy Thanksgiving week. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Saturday, November the 23rd, 1963, 8:15 a.m. Lee Harvey Oswald is now back in his cell after being questioned for only 3 hours. At 12:21 p.m. Central Standard Time, Jack Ruby shoots Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police station. And then at 2:07 p.m., Lee Harvey Oswald dies at the same location and hospital that President John F. Kennedy died at Parkland Hospital. The beat goes on, the strangeness continues, and the mystery is out there 32 minutes after the hour. Well, Todd, this is an amazing thing. It's like I'm more confused, but I hope I'm not confusing the audience. It's not your fault nor mine. It's just we don't know. It's like a gigantic puzzle that continues to expand, and it's amazing. But let's do this. Yeah. People who've been patient, they want to hear from you, too, and their opinions are expressed. Let's say good morning to John in the Silver State in the beautiful city of Reno, Nevada. Good morning, John. Thanks for waiting.
Good morning, Dr. Sky. It's good to talk to you. Frank Morano turned me on to your show a couple years ago.
Oh, thanks.
And I've enjoyed you ever since.
Well, thank you, sir. How's Reno this morning? Nice and cold, right?
It's nice. It's getting chilly. It's that time of year. It's starting to get chilly up here.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places when they used to run the Reno air races at Stead Field, right at the airport there. You know that one, I'm sure. There you go.
Yep, out of Stead.
That's right.
I had a question for you.
Go ahead.
Last year, I was in a big parking lot, a Walmart parking lot, and a huge chunk of ice, maybe half the size of a refrigerator, fell out of the sky, and it disintegrated on the pavement.
Well, we appreciate it. Like I say, we try to ask everybody to stay on measure.
Okay,
that's an interesting one.
That was going, yeah.
You know what we're going to do here, Todd? We're going to say respectfully to our caller from Reno that has to be for another show, and that's another one of the great mysteries, yet the piece of ice that came out of the sky, just like the UFOs. Yeah. Let's continue with Tony in Clifton. Good morning, Tony. How are you today and this morning?
Good morning. I was going to just listen,
when I heard Todd talking about James Garrison. He's like my favorite district attorney. Once I saw the movie JFK, I really started to look into everything that was happening. And Garrison is the only person who took anything related to the death of our dear President Kennedy to trial. And it's amazing to me how quickly that was like a very politicized judge who quickly turned, the whole trial off. The gentleman who they were investigating was Clay somebody. And in a minute, that whole thing just disintegrated. It was just amazing to me. And Jim Garrison was my hero. I looked at him as the only person.
I agree. And Jim Garrison, I worked in New Orleans for years. I always thought they should have had a statue to that man, but he wasn't very popular in New Orleans because he went against people like Clay Shaw, who Tommy Lee Jones played. And that was the only man ever brought that they brought to court for the murder of the president. And Clay Shaw, it's crazy. They still have placards up to Clay Shaw, though, in the French Quarter. And he was definitely proven later to be a CIA operative.
Interesting.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Tony, let's ask you a direct question. Of all the research and all the things you've heard over the years, who do you think really, or what group is responsible for the assassination of President Kennedy? I want to hear your opinion.
Well, I've watched so many documentaries, read books, saw the Roger Stone movie, and I think the CIA was heavily involved. I was watching and also Jim Garrison's papers are part of the National Archives. I just wanted to say that, which is amazing. They're part of our National Archives. So that's amazing that everything's there. I think it was the CIA. And I'm a security buff, so it seemed very strange to me that in Dallas, it was so open for President Kennedy to be shot. The way the announcement was made, I think ahead of time of where it would be. And then there was the FBI office in Dallas, and there was, movies made and stories about how they were investigating someone. They were investigating Lee Harvey Oswald, and he, was going to the FBI in Dallas on several times, and they never did anything with it. And then after it all came out, that was a big piece of it. So I think it was, as a kid, I always thought it was LBJ had something to do with it.
Yes, we never talked about that, Todd, because what Tony's bringing up here, obviously there was an oil and vinegar relationship, right, between President Kennedy and as documented so many times. That's amazing. Right. But Tony, thank you for your insight, and wishing you and everybody the best of a happy Thanksgiving week as we move to
thank you, guys. Enjoy your holiday. God bless. Bye.
God bless you. Let's say good morning to Carol in the great state of Florida. Good morning, Carol. You're on with our special guest, Todd C. Elliott. How are you?
Hi, good. How you doing?
Good and doing great.
Great.
I just wanted to ask you guys how much truth Barry Baker's story, because my ex-husband hung out with her a lot, and he was convinced. So I'm just curious.
Wow, Carol, you bring up something good. Todd, this is interesting. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Okay, so, we're on the same publishing house. I've met her quite a few times, and for all of her story, which isn't written from the perspective of a lot of facts, here's this one girl who just by happenstance gets to work with Lee Harvey Oswald, again, at a place that was a front for the CIA, which leads me to believe she's still an agent, because you don't leave the organization. And I think her book was part of a huge disinformation project. But and here's the thing, no photographs of the two exist. For her being so in love and them being in love, there's not one single photograph of them together. He was married at the time, and she just happened to fall into Lee Oswald's lap and met Jack Ruby and met David Ferrie and all these nefarious characters who were central to the assassination. And she wrote another book on David Ferrie. And David Ferrie was portrayed by Joe Pesci in the movie.
I remember that.
I don't find her story to be credible. It's written like fiction. That's because it might be, but that's just my opinion. And I know her personally, and I've never been a fan, but the weird thing about her was we both gave a presentation at Tulane University, and or maybe Loyola, but she was there and I was there, and we both did our piece. The first thing she does when she gets up there, she's asking if anybody has any prescription drugs, because she ran out and she needed drugs. So she was basically asking the audience for, And
I've never heard of anybody asking for that. Carol, have you ever heard anybody asking for that? I mean, that's kind of a little out there.
I know it might be commonplace on a university, but
right. And how do you know what prescription drug you're supposed to have that she needs? But that's kind of a long shot.
She was very, very specific, and she was also trying to sell some of her artwork. And she also had a bodyguard, which I thought was very strange. And she would talk to folks and meet with folks, and she would prod them for information. She was like, well, what do y'all know? Can you tell me? And I was just like, oh, man, I don't know. She's kind of like a fortune teller or something.
I don't know. But, Carol, you got the last word, as we do with our guests and callers, to talk about things that you get a chance to reply. So please continue.
I agree. I thought that there was a couple of odd things about her that I watched an interview once, and he spoke about how they were intimate and in the details, and just like, to make such a point to say those things was totally unnecessary. And it was, I can't remember exactly what she said, and I don't want to even say it, but it was, just turned me off. Like this isn't even real.
Right.
Well, Carol, thank you for being part of our program and bringing up these interesting concepts that many people, never get to hear. Yeah. And especially with our special guest, we're wishing you the best for a beautiful Thanksgiving week and a wonderful holiday season. So thanks, Carol. And
thank you. Thank you. You too.
Have a good morning. Yeah, this is interesting, and I'd like to see if we can go now to listen to something about the demise of Lee Harvey Oswald, as Tom Pettit of NBC News happens to be in the right place at the right time, where Lee Harvey Oswald was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Let's hear clip number 4, if we may.
Being let out by Captain Fritz. There is the prisoner. You have anything to say in your defense?
What?
There's a shot. Oswald has been shot. Oswald has been shot.
That's incredible. And just like you, Todd, whatever age you are, I was 7 years of age, and I remember I looked at my mom and I said, we lived in Rockaway Beach. It was unbelievable times. I loved it. And we liked watching television on our black and white TV, and all that week the cartoons were off because of continuous coverage. And then that particular day, on that Saturday, I can't believe what I'm seeing, and can never really understand it when you're 7 years old. Imagine how any other people who saw that right on live TV. That's amazing. And one of the things that always bothered me, and this is really strange as a shooter, I train, how in that bullet that was fired from his little Colt Agent, a little .38, snub-nosed revolver, there's all these people standing around. So he has this amazing ability, Jack Ruby, to fire at close range right into the stomach, which usually you don't survive that kind of a wound. This was like we don't know if he had a hollow point bullet, maybe just a regular, full metal jacket. But my point is, that bullet, it must have gone through Lee Harvey Oswald. I probably didn't stop. So did anybody else get shot? Apparently not. That's an amazing a bit of marksmanship. And don't you think he planned for that, right?
Well, after investigating and writing a book on the Kennedy assassination, I no longer believe in coincidences. So, and I will say I've watched that footage too. Now, I wasn't born then, but that was the first time that a public execution was shown on live television. And
you're absolutely right. And we got to go to that break, Todd. Again, I'm sorry to cut people off here, but the clock rules in time and space. But more with you as we continue to talk about your book and the mystery of who Rose Cheramie was with on the way to Dallas back in that time period in the 1963 year, as we continue on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, this is author Vincent Bugliosi, the author of Reclaiming History, the Assassination of President John F. Kennedy. I was also the author of Helter Skelter, the Manson murders, which I prosecuted. I can tell you that I'm interviewed by people all the time around the country. Steve Cates is one of the finest interviewers I've ever had. He does his homework. He asks intelligent questions, and it was an honor to be on his show. I would recommend that people listen to Steve Cates.
25th, 1963. At 12:14 p.m., John F. Kennedy's coffin enters St. Matthew's Cathedral for his celebration of life. 3:13 p.m., John F. Kennedy's funeral ends with the lighting of the eternal flame. Incredible story. The mystery continues. Our special guest, Todd C. Elliott, continues to talk with us about it. And the callers continue to come in, and we appreciate it. Let's say good morning to Michael in Stamford, Connecticut. Good morning, Michael. How are you this morning? And thanks for your patience.
Hey, Dr. Sky, it's nice to talk to you again.
Thank you.
I got an older brother who's down in Tennessee, and he was always a big Jim Garrison fan. He's been reading a lot. I read a ton of books on the assassination myself. I was a big fan of Jim Mars, the great Jim Mars, down in Texas. He did so much research. There's a couple of, you happen to mention Tulane University. Did you ever read Edward Haslam's book, Dr. Mary's Monkey? About Dr. Mary Sherman, who was doing research on she actually, I think Lee Harvey Oswald was the bodyguard. She actually, they were working on the monkey cells to make a cancer virus, which exactly what the cancer actually exploded after in the cancer rates in this country after the research. But I read that book years ago, and it's just I'm 61 years old, so I was conceived when my mom was stressed about the assassination. I'm just so sick and tired of, we have to wait all these years about what's going on, and there's the hidden hand. We all may have to wait till we meet our maker before we find out what really happened. But
you're right, Michael.
There's another. I know that Roger Stone wrote the book, and he implicated LBJ. But look at what happened after he was assassinated. We got the Great Society and all of the spending and the trajectory of the country. Just to have the president assassinated this way in public was a statement. I don't think I know about all of the different players that are supposedly involved, but I don't want to impugn WABC. There's two other factors I'd like to just make really quick. He wanted to have a certain country register as lobbyist, and also there's a little place called Dimona where Israel wanted to have a nuclear reactor. Now, a lot of people say, as soon as you steer off into that topic with Israel, you call it anti-Semite, but there's much bigger things going on. He didn't want Israelis to have nukes, and he wanted to register their people as lobbyists.
The mystery goes on, Michael. I hate to cut you short, but I want Todd to respond because we have other folks that want to join us. But I appreciate you, and hey, thank you for being part of the show. So, Todd, a lot of topics here, a lot of mysteries that we can unfold, and your response to Michael, please.
Michael, I did read Dr. Mary's Monkey. Ed Haas is he's on Trine Day Publishing House with me, so he's a fellow author with Trine Day and TrineDay.com. Yeah, and that is a much better book than Judith Berry Baker's book because it's written from a factual standpoint. I mean, that was a real crime. That woman died doing the research that they were. It was believed that they were trying to. They were funded by the federal government They were working on some sort of a weapon to take out Castro, and they had come up with all different sorts of ideas. And I just think that when the Bay of Pigs failed, I think the CIA, they had plans to assassinate Castro, but after the Bay of Pigs, they shifted that almost the same plan in a sense to happen to JFK on mainland USA. But yeah, it is a great book. If you ever get a chance
Michael,
to read it.
thank you for being part of the show here, but I want to end the show in just a few minutes on a very positive note here. We asked a question before, and I'm surprised that many people didn't call in, or maybe they don't know the answer, but the question was, what other notables died on November the 22nd, 1963?
Oh, I think I know.
Go ahead.
I know one.
Go ahead.
Aldous Huxley.
Wow.
Wrote Brave New World.
Yeah, wow. See, that's amazing. And if we had a gift to give away, you would have won. But then the audience would be unhappy because you're our guest.
Right.
But here's the other one, ladies and gentlemen. C.S. Lewis, the author of many books, The Chronicles of Narnia. That's amazing. But again, all those people, very famous in their world, look at the power of the loss of the President of the United States and the assassination. Of course, all news, 24 hours, 28 hours, if there was a day that long, were all centered on that, of course. But here's another thing about Aldous Huxley, The Brave New World. Apparently, well, I'll give you the first opportunity. Do you know what he died of? At least that's what's written. Can you tell us?
Oh, gosh. I don't remember what he died of. I think he had requested some hallucinogens before he died.
Todd, you're a pretty smart guy, and the answer is, according to what I'm reading, again, I don't believe everything I read, but I wouldn't do this to myself, an LSD overdose, which in the chemical world, it's D-lysergic acid diethylamide. And again, that stuff you don't want to mess with, no doubt about it. But again, I saw a movie about living, loathing, or something in Las Vegas one time, and it was like, wow, that was the strangest trip. It looked like an acid trip or an LSD trip. And I don't think I have the movie right, but I sat there going myself, why am I sitting here watching this movie? It was so strange. But there you go. I think it was it S. Walter Thompson or somebody like that?
Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and
Hunter
Loathing
S.
in Las
Thompson,
Vegas.
excuse me.
It's a crazier book, too.
I'm sure it is. Anyway, let's wrap it up with you, of course, our special guest. And, well, this is amazing, the story of Rose Cheramie. So if I'm reading this correctly, when I read your book, is that she, Rose Cheramie, is sitting there in this, hospital. And don't let me take the energy from you. But apparently she's looking, a television screen, and she's yelling and screaming, saying that when they turn the corner, they're going to kill and assassinate the president. Is that fairly accurate, or in your words from the book? How did it go?
Well, that's what people told me, that she was in the day room watching the television. And apparently it was crazy that it was, it was such big news in the South. They were carrying it live television. And again, with the Oswald being escorted out, and I've watched that footage several times. And if you go back and play that clip that you played, that last clip you played, you'll hear the car horn honk, and the car horn didn't honk until Oswald came into view. I think the car horn might have been a signal to the shooter to get ready. Here he is, and on the second horn, the gunshot fired. Also, we see Oswald doing a lot of wardrobe changes. The camera was strategically placed on him. And I think because it was black and white TV, I kind of think that was by design. I might sound crazy this, but then all of a sudden we see Oswald in a black sweater that's not going to show up as blood on a black and white TV.
Totally amazing. All this changing.
Rose, and Rose Cheramie knew that once she had been dropped back off into Texas, that her time was limited. And within less than 4 years, a little less than 4 years, she would be dead. Another JFK statistic. And the thing that really, you mentioned Kennedy being buried on Sunday. Also buried that day was Oswald. It's weird. It's ironic that they rushed him to Parkland Hospital too. They said Oswald was still alive, but the president wasn't. And then, so they both die in the same place, and then they're both buried on the same day. But no one was a pallbearer for Lee Harvey Oswald except members of the press that day, and I think that's kind of poetic.
Wow!
And I think it was predicated on the press or investigative journalists to find the truth that they buried with Lee Harvey Oswald. And one thing that in my research of Rose and talking to her family and people that knew what was going on in Eunice, Louisiana back then, you bring this up and people were still scared. They were still scared to talk about it because that fear is still prevalent and it's still out there to this day. I had to remind people that Carlos Marcello was dead and he couldn't hurt them anymore.
Oh, jeez. Let's shift gears to something. I want to get your opinion on this and the sadness of the Charlie Kirk assassination. We all saw this back in September. But from my end, looking at rifles and doing all kinds of stuff, and we could talk about that another time. But apparently the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, has a German 98 Mauser, which was originally configured, folks, not to be too technical, in the 8mm cartridge. I've shot tons of these, blah, 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 rebored to 30-06. Here's my question to you. When you look at the video of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, and you see all these strange things from hand signals and people that were his, protective team, I know from the distance that this alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, took the shot. If you even shot somebody with a 30-06, we've shot watermelons, we've done all kinds of videos, very simply, without getting graphic, the watermelon would have exploded literally into just vapor from a 30-06 shot. And if he's being shot in the neck, wait a second, that doesn't jive with me. Todd C. Elliott, what's your opinion of that very tragic event, too, the great mystery?
Well, I've noticed that one of the gentlemen in the background making the hand signals, Charlie Clark, seems to bear a resemblance to one of the men who escorted President Trump off the stage after he had got shot in the ear.
Oh, really?
Now, one of the things I found interesting was that controversial cover that Time Magazine put out. Looking up at a lot of people focused on his neck, but on President Trump's neck, for what they thought it looked like. But the real controversial thing, and the thing for me, and I know why Time Magazine put that picture of President Trump on that cover, because of the ear. And if you look at his ear, you got a great shot of that ear. And there's a little bit of truth there because he wore a Band-Aid for a couple of days, but I never saw anything like that before. And I knew that, and here's the thing, assassinations are political. People are political.
Of course.
And the Charlie Kirk thing probably was, but I knew that the day that President Trump was allegedly shot in the ear, I knew he was going to win the presidency that day.
Of course.
I believe that was
God bless anybody that's shot and survives. But again, not to have you answer it, you've given us your opinion. For people out there in the world of marksmanship, ballistics, and, the shooter sport, people in military, it just behooves me to see a 30-06 round from that distance, which isn't even that astronomical, maybe 200 yards, maybe, if that's correct. Let me say this again. If where the impact of the projectile hits, there's no way that could be that caliber from that distance unless they use something different. And some say that closer in, a suppressed weapon, something that's tiny that does incredible damage. But that's a story for another time if we talk about those from the world of ballistics. Todd C. Elliott, a privilege and honor to have you here and call you a friend of the show. Like to stay in touch with you, a Rose by many other names. Ladies and gentlemen, this particular story goes down Rose Cheramie in the JFK assassination. I want to thank you for being part of our show, sir, and hope you and your family have a beautiful Thanksgiving as everybody listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. And hey, one more thought. We're hearing, and I don't know how accurate this is, but hopefully it is accurate. Wouldn't it be great if President Trump finally answers the charge of whether or not extraterrestrials are real in the sense that we've captured craft? Wouldn't that be an amazing thing?
That would be something. Thank you, Doc, for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you to the team that makes the show happen here, Tony and Bill. Ladies and gentlemen, again, have a great Thanksgiving week. Next week, we may jump on the UFO subject in great detail to update you. And then our last Saturday of every month is a rebroadcast because I do a little dinner program on a lake, Cold Canyon Lake, a dinner cruise called the Dr. Sky Cruise on the Dolly Steamboat. If you're ever out here, check out dollysteamboat.com. You'll experience the beauty of the dark of the night. Have a great week. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?